Welcome to the Preserving Family Podcast. The purpose of this podcast is to equip you to gain insight, information, and inspiration to help you protect, teach, and guide your family during these turbulent times. Our goal is to provide tools and resources to help you strengthen and preserve your own marriages and families. Now here are your hosts, Dr. Mark and Janie Ogletree.
Well, everyone, welcome. We're glad that you're here with us today, and I'm grateful that Janie's here because she's been traveling and all over the countryside. And honey, so glad that you're back.
Yes, it's good to be back.
You sure?
I mean, I've been having lots of fun, way too much fun, but it was good to be back.
Yeah. Well, we are coming to you really after just leaving a church history trip where we went from Palmyra to Nauvoo. We were the directors of that trip with Murdoch Travel, and it was awesome. We had a great experience. We had a lot of great people, and we enjoyed ourselves. Got to be we have. There's always a few surprises too. Like we didn't expect to have a tornado in Carthage, right?
Always an adventure. Yeah.
And that was we actually had to hunker down in the storm shelter at the hotel in Nauvoo, right? But yet our good friend Casey, who was right behind us, Casey Griffiths, was hunkered down in the Carthage jail, I think, right? During the tornado.
Yeah.
So
that's a good story to tell.
So whoever went on that tour definitely got their money's worth, right? So I don't know, Janie, it's just kind of fun to think about. I think we definitely want to tell people that in our minds, these type of trips can be life-changing. And we've done it now quite a few times, but I still come back every time changed, renewed, strengthened, more passion for the gospel and love for it. And so I'm always grateful for those opportunities. Janie, I'll just ask you if there's any kind of takeaway, for that you kind of experienced or that you've thought of lately of how that impacted you, or what was it that impacted you?
I agree that every time, I mean, we've done this many times, and every time we go, I feel like we're on sacred holy ground.
Yeah.
And it just is a renewal of your testimony every time that we're at these sites, of the devotion, the sacrifice that these people gave they gave it all. They gave everything. They gave their lives. They gave, everything that they had to build the gospel, Joseph Smith restored the gospel, and then all these people that followed him gave up their families, their friends, their everything, were chased by mobs, persecuted, and were resilient and built up the kingdom of God on the earth so that we could enjoy it today. And so it's just always such a renewal of, wow, we need to step up our game. To me, I always come home so like, oh, wow, we have it so easy.
Right.
I mean, we're asked to minister. We're asked to, attend different meetings, and we hear complaints or hold callings. And these people literally were giving everything that they had, every ounce of everything. And so it's just always just such a wow.
It just recalibrates your perspective on, wow, I was really worried. I know in our stake, one of the biggest debates is how long meetings go sometimes. And if we have a fireside and if it goes over for 10 minutes, people get, kind of upset. And I just kind of walked away. Same with you, just thinking of a group of people who are being persecuted, being physically abused, having their lives threatened, having their homes burned down. And then those things actually do happen. And they just keep getting up, dusting themselves off, and going to the next place. So that was a good takeaway for me, to just be reminded of the sacrifice of the early saints. And then the question is always, well, what kept them going? I mean, how did they keep going? And we quoted from a talk Elder Holland gave on our trip, or on our tour, of that it was the recurring dreams and visions, and visits from angels and other spiritual experiences that allowed them to keep going. And every time they were knocked down, they just got right back up and they moved to the next place and kept going. So that was a big takeaway for me as well. And the other one that I thought a lot about was just, I've told you this, Janie, before, but in my life, in my little world, as we sit down here in my office, I just like to have everything perfect so that I can write or answer emails or work or whatever. But got to have the music going, and just everything. The aesthetics have to be perfect. And the awareness of that with Joseph Smith, he never had that. I mean, never once did he ever have that kind of atmosphere to work in. The atmosphere was people are trying to kill you every day and burn your house down and ruin your family and destroy your children. And with all that hanging over your head, you've got to run a church and build the kingdom. And I just walked away with a new appreciation for him, as well as how did he do that? I mean, I can't do that.
Right. And then as we're going to kind of address today, I think both of us walked away also thinking about how amazing, first of all, that Joseph was, that his brother Hiram was, his brother Alvin was, his parents were, and that really got us thinking about how incredible the Smith family was. And I mean, everything happens for a reason, and you can see why the Lord placed Joseph in the family that he did, in the place where they did, with the parents that he had, with the siblings that he had, because all of that made it able for him to restore the gospel to the earth. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today, because that was another huge takeaway, I think, for both of us.
Yeah. And there were many people who commented on how remarkable the Smith family was. And I love this from Joseph Smith. He said, "Words and language are inadequate to express the gratitude that I owe to God for having given me such an honorable parentage." Or in other words, just wonderful, wonderful parents. You know, Janie, I think Lucy Mack Smith and her husband, Joseph Smith Sr., were like the perfect combination, because I feel, not that I can say I know, obviously don't know them personally, but just what I've read and studied over the years, he seems more calm, more kind of a gentle type soul, you know, kind of, in my mind, kind of like being in the background a little bit, kind of like your dad, you know, just kind of that kind of maybe personality. But Lucy Mack is the opposite, and she's this tiny lady who's just full of fire, you know, and passion, and doesn't have a hard time telling people how it is, right? I mean, she's full of faith. When they're on the Erie Canal and the ice is, you know, clogged up the Buffalo Harbor, she's the one that's disappointed that the men on board don't have more faith that the ice can crack and the boat can sail through. And she's just on their case about, I can't believe you lack this faith. And the point is, she had no trouble just telling people how it was. And she was just bold. And I think Joseph probably takes after both of his parents, in that he definitely has that passion of that his mom has, but he also has the gentle soul of his father at the same time. Kind of the
velvet and steel at the same time.
Yeah, the velvet and steel is a great way to describe it. You know, Janie, another fun one on Lucy Mack Smith that just shows her, once again, her passion and her grit, but also her devotion to her family. You know, the family was moving to New York State, and once again, think of Joseph Smith. He's young. He's an elementary school age kid with a leg who's, you know, he's had surgery on that leg, and so he's on a crutch, or he's limping at least. But they travel with this man, and Mr. Howard is his name, and this Mr. Howard turns out to be a horrible person. And he's doing things like he won't let the kids ride in the wagon. He makes them walk the whole way. At one point, he throws out all the family's belongings just on the side of the road. I'll just read this. It says, "Lucy immediately pursued this man, discovered him in a barroom of a tavern where they all had spent the night. She demanded in front of all the customers why he was not keeping the agreement. She insisted he tell her why he had dumped out all their things and stolen their horses. Mr. Howard simply replied that he had used up her money and could take her no further. Lucy then turns to the crowd in this bar and says, 'Gentlemen and ladies, please give me your attention for a moment. Now, as sure as there is a God in heaven, that team, as well as the goods, belong to my husband, and this man intends to take them from me, or at least this team, leaving me with 8 children without the means of proceeding on my journey.' She then turned to Mr. Howard and said, 'Sir, I now forbid you touching the team,' which is their horses, 'or driving it one step further. You can go about your own business. I have no use for you. I shall take charge of the team myself and hereafter attend to my own affairs.' And then Mr. Howard tries to drive off. Lucy grabs the reins and the 8 children got on the wagon. She pushes him off, and the bar patrons cheer. Anyway, there's her personality.
She's awesome.
Right. She's not afraid of anyone, right?
Here's another story that I love about Joseph's mother, Lucy Mack Smith. They were traveling from Palmyra to Kirtland on the Erie Canal, just on a riverboat barge, and the bridges were really low.
Yeah.
And so she got on the other mothers for not taking care of their children and paying attention. And so here's what she said. I soon discovered among the mothers in our company a carelessness with regard to their children, even when their lives were in danger, which gave me great anxiety. For instance, if children are on the deck when the boat passed under a bridge, they could be thrown overboard or bruised in such a manner as was terrible to think of. I called the sisters together and I tried to make them realize their children's danger and their own responsibility. Sisters, I said, God has given you children to be a blessing to you, and it is your duty to take care of them, to keep them out of every possible danger, and especially in such a place as this, to have them always by your side. I warn you now to attend better to your duty in this respect, or your children will, by some unforeseen accident, be taken from you. After this, we received news by another boat of the death of a small child that had occurred the day before on the same river. It was killed by being on deck when the boat was passing under a bridge. I thought that this accident of what I had said, taken together, would rouse the sisters to greater attention. But in this I was mistaken, for they took no thought of either. And in their excuse for their neglecting their children was that they could not make them mind. I told them that I could make them mind me easily enough, and since they wouldn't control them, I should.
Right.
She's awesome.
If we don't control our kids, society will. And Lucy Mack Smith is society, right?
She's going to take control. I then got the children together around me and said, now mark what I say to you. When I come up the stairs and raise my hand, you must, every one of you, run to me as fast as you can, and you must not stop a minute. Will you do so? They all answered heartily, yes, ma'am, we will. And to their credit, I would say that they kept their faith better than some very great folks do in these days, for they never failed to do just as I told, not only in that, but everything else while I was with them.
So you definitely want Lucy Mack Smith as your
primary president.
Mrs. Doubtfire or something.
She just rallied all those kids and took control of the whole ship. I love it.
And for me, the funny thing is to hear that and think, wait, there was neglectful parents in the 1800s. I mean, I thought that was kind of a thing for our generation, right? But yeah, Lucy Mack Smith, she doesn't mess around. That's a great story of parenthood. We probably should say some awesome things about Joseph's father, because I think Joseph Smith Sr. becomes one of the key players in the whole restoration with, just the fact that when Joseph tells him of his visit with Moroni, and his father says that's of God and encourages him to do whatever he can to get the record. But the fact that Joseph's dad believes him when the story is really quite unbelievable is pretty impressive, right? That his dad would give him that kind of support.
Yeah, because we know that he didn't like
formal
organized religion. He was very kind of opposed to it. He was believed in God and a very God-fearing man. But
he also, he read the scriptures with his family. I mean, I think he would be the type that would have said, because Joseph said something like this, and it probably came from his dad, that I can go into the woods and read the scriptures and learn more about God than I could at sitting in any type of formal, church service. So yeah, it's pretty cool. And then Joseph, as we know, it meant so much to Joseph on the day after the church was organized on April the 6th, 1830, when his father, as well as other family members, are baptized. It just meant so much to Joseph. He's actually weeping because he really never thought he would see the day when his dad joined a church, right? And I love this quote from, I think it's from Lorenzo Snow. He said, I do not know that any man among the saints was more loved than Father Smith. And when anyone was seriously sick, Father Smith would be called for. Whether it was night or day, he was as noble and generous a man as I've ever known. At the time of his death, Joseph Sr. was described as a man faithful to his God and to the church in every situation and under all circumstances through which he was called to pass. Maybe, Janie, the greatest tribute to Joseph Smith Sr. was that the entire church membership called him Father Smith. I mean, just the fact that that was his title should tell us everything about this really noble man.
And he became the patriarch of the church too, right?
Right. Yeah, he did.
Very beloved.
I think this tribute from Joseph Smith is probably one of the best. He says, I now say that my father never did a mean act that might be said was ungenerous in his life, to my knowledge. I love my father in his memory, and the memory of his noble deeds rests with ponderous weight upon my mind, and many of his kind and parental words to me are written on the tablet of my heart. Sacred to me are the thoughts which I cherish of the history of his life that have rolled through my mind and has been implanted there by my own observation since I was born. And then he says, my mother is also one of the noblest and best of all women. I love how Joseph Smith reveres his parents. I mean, that's such a great. We're going to talk about the Smith family today and the type of family they were, but there you see that great.
Just great, honorable, wonderful people.
This love and loyalty, right?
So we just pulled out a few principles that we have learned the past couple of weeks and have known probably, but we're reminded of the past couple of weeks of how incredible this family was and some principles that they retaught us and that we'd like to share. And the first one was that Joseph Smith's greatest supporters were his family.
Yeah.
Supporters and cheerleaders. And so one of the striking observations from church history is that, first of all, his parents believed him. When he came home after the first vision, his mother believed him. His brother believed him. His sisters believed him. His wife believed him. You know, when critics mocked him, family members stood by him.
We know there would be a lot of families if you came home and said, hey, I just saw an angel, or had some kind of spiritual experience, that believing a 14-year-old or a 17-year-old may not be the first thought on your mind, right? You may question that as a parent.
Exactly. Joseph once said of his brother Hiram, I could pray in my heart with all my brethren were like unto my beloved brother Hiram. And that's one of the highest compliments Joseph ever gave anyone. That near the end of his life, Joseph declared, Brother Hiram, what a faithful heart you have got. For decades, Hiram defended Joseph, traveled with him, suffered persecution with him, and ultimately died next to him in Carthage. And we know Alvin did the same before Alvin's death. Alvin totally supported him, and on his deathbed told Joseph, do whatever the Lord,
do all you can to get the record,
do all the Lord requires of you. And so his family really stood by him. And as we look at families today, I think that's such a great principle, is like, do we support each other? Do we go to each other's concerts, games, activities? Do we cheer each other on, or do we compete against each other? Are we each other's teammates?
Right.
And, are we there to support no matter what? Or do we tear down and criticize? And
can we give compliments and praise? I think as siblings, right? Can a sibling give a compliment or praise another sibling, right? I mean, once again, you think of Hiram again, and I'm sure Alvin would have been the same way. Here's Hiram, an older brother, but he never once tried to have power himself. He never tried to take over. He was just completely supportive of his younger brother, Joseph. And I think it's such a great example of what I would call family loyalty and family love and support.
And family unity. Yeah, and I think that as parents, that's our job, is to teach them to love one another, to serve one another in the home, to build each other up, to not use words that tear down, but to build each other, to cheer each other. And I really think that was a great lesson that we learned from the Smith family.
I think it's a great lesson. Maybe we could call this one point number 2, and that's that the Smith home was definitely a spiritual home, filled with religious conversation. We know that Lucy Mack Smith described evenings where the family gathered and discussed spiritual matters, and this was long before Joseph had any kind of spiritual experience, in the sacred grove. But after the first vision, Joseph would recount and he would share with the family the things he was learning. And we know from research that there were many visitors that appeared to Joseph Smith. It wasn't just God the Father and Jesus Christ, and it wasn't just Moroni, but many other special visitors were noted, from Peter, James, and John to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, to Old Testament prophets, New Testament leaders. or apostles, and then Book of Mormon, Alma, Nephi. I mean, it's the who's who of the Book of Mormon, Moroni, all these great people and prophets from the Book of Mormon. And I think Lucy Mack Smith's statement was that Joseph could talk about these people and talk about their mode of dress, the way they traveled, how they lived, as if he had lived
among them.
among them, yeah. And I would say in Jerusalem in 600 AD or in the New World or whatever. And it was quite fascinating.
Can you imagine those family home evening discussions every night? Those come follow me lessons as Joseph teaching them about Moses and Peter, James, and John and Nephi and Alma and, like as if he knew them personally. I mean, I bet they were just glued to the edge of their seat listening.
Talk about incredible entertainment, right? And so I love the idea that the family listened, they would ask questions, they would have discussions about some of these things, but also just in the scriptures in general. They're reading the scriptures, they're praying together as a family. And we'll go back to Joseph Smith Sr. for a minute and say, okay, there's definitely there's a difference between being religious and being spiritual. And I think that we could say of Joseph Smith Sr., he was certainly spiritual, and he welcomed that kind of those practices. This is from William Smith, one of Joseph's brothers. We always had family prayer since I can remember. In fact, he says, I well remember Father used to carry his spectacles in his vest pocket. And when us boys saw him feel for his specs, we knew that it was a signal to get ready for prayer. And if we did not notice it, Mother would say, William, or whoever was the negligent one, get ready for prayer. And after the prayer, we had a song that we would sing. And then Lucy Mack Smith said it this way, but she said, every evening we gathered our children together. I think that we presented the most peculiar aspect of any family that ever lived on the earth, all seated in a circle, father, mother, sons, and daughters, listening in breathless anxiety to the religious teachings of a boy 17 years of age. That was, Janie, what you were talking about. We were convinced that God was about to bring to light something that we may stay in our minds upon, something that we could get a more definite idea of than anything which had ever been taught to us. And we rejoiced in it with exceeding great joy. The sweetest union and happiness pervaded our house. No jar or discord disturbed our peace, and tranquility reigned in our midst. So this is just a great family, right? This is a family who's religious. They're teaching the gospel of Jesus Christ to each other, and they certainly are having spiritual experiences within the walls of their own home.
Just to illustrate what a great spiritual family they were, Lucy turned to prayer for divine help to sustain her family. During the march from Ohio to Missouri, known as Zion's Camp, her sons Joseph and Hiram were seriously ill with cholera, and their lives were almost taken. At one point, Hiram sprang to his feet and exclaimed, Joseph, we shall return to our families. I have had an open vision in which I saw Mother kneeling under an apple tree, and she is even now asking God in tears to spare our lives. The Spirit testifies that her prayers will be answered.
And they were, because they survived, right? That cholera outbreak.
It's just those incredible prayers of a righteous, faithful mother on her posterity. I love that.
Yeah.
It totally reminds me of what Elder Holland said in a talk that's called In Times of Trouble. But he said, in the gospel of Jesus Christ, you can have help from both sides of the veil. And you must never forget that. When disappointment and discouragement strike, and they will, you remember and never forget that if our eyes could be opened, we would see horses and chariots of fire as far as the eye can see riding at reckless speed to come to our protection. They will always be there, these armies of heaven in defense of Abraham's seed. And I can testify that I think that's such a powerful principle that we as mothers and fathers and parents, that as we pray for our children, that we do have help from the other side of the veil. Lucy knew right at the moment, she just sensed that her boys were in trouble and went and gave a fervent, heartfelt prayer. And I know in my life, so many times I have felt that need or that impression to stop and pray for a certain child or a certain family member. And hopefully it helped. But again, I think that we need to rely on help from the other side of the veil, because I think that's a real true principle. And I love that from Elder Holland.
Well, I've seen that in your life many times where you've just known instantly that someone was in trouble and needed help And I think that's a great gift of the Spirit for sure.
So the third principle or lesson that we learned about this incredible, remarkable family is that they endured so many hardships together. They went through so many trials, I'm sure so much joy and happiness also. But in the midst of it, they had crop failures, financial losses, disease, poverty, death of children, so many forced moves, so many crop failure, like we talked about. But they remained united. They all worked together as a team, and they just kept trudging through. And they supported each other, and everybody chipped in for the success of the whole family. And I just admire that. I think today we see families that go through all these hard trials, and it really splinters families. You know, people,
or at least it could.
They could, yeah. But they're such a great example of working together and staying united through all these hardships.
I love that principle that when there is trial, struggle, whatever, for all of us, then that's when a family comes running together towards each other and supports each other. The idea that shared sacrifice can create strong bonds, more so than comfort and ease would create a strong bond. But going through hard things together. But they just remained faithful to each other. And that's a great example to all of us.
Lucy Mack said, "The sweetest union and happiness pervaded in our house. No jar nor discord disturbed our peace, and tranquility reigned in our midst." I mean, who can say that? Like that, to me, that's
we couldn't even say that in the middle of a family home evening, right?
I mean, to me, it just is a little piece of heaven that they had in their home. And I just admire that so much.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think there's evidence for what Joseph learned, from his family, so that he himself could become an exceptional husband and father. Listen to some of these journal entries of Joseph. "Spent the day at home in the enjoyment of the society of my family around the social fireside." Another, "At home all day, took solid comfort with my family." Another, "I was engaged in reading and meditation and mostly with my family." Another, "I rode out to my farm with my children and did not return until after dark." Another, "At 4 p.m, I went with my little Frederick to exercise myself by sliding on the ice." Another, "In the morning, I took my children on a pleasure ride in the carriage." Another, he talks about attending the circus with his family. Joseph was a family man. Here's a letter that we have dated April the 4th, 1839. From Liberty Jail, Joseph writes, "My dear Emma, I think of you and the children continually. If I could tell you my tale, I think you would say it was altogether enough for once to gratify the malice of hell that I have suffered. I want to see little Frederick, Joseph, Julie, and Alexander, and old Major. Old Major's his horse. I want you should not let those little fellows forget me. Tell them Father loves them with a perfect love, and he is doing all he can to get away from the mob, to come to them. Do teach them all you can, that they may have good minds. Be tender and kind to them. Don't be fractious with them, but listen to their wants. Tell them Father says that they must be good children and mind their mother." Anyway, it just tells you where Joseph's heart was. Here he is in Liberty Jail, just so focused and riveted on his family, and even giving Emma some counsel. Not that she needed it, but maybe just some counsel on how to raise those kids. We should make it clear right here that Joseph loved Emma so much. Mercy Thompson recorded this, that I saw him, Joseph, by the bedside of Emma, his wife, in sickness, exhibiting all the solicitude and sympathy possible for the tenderest of hearts and the most affectionate of natures to feel. We also have some journal entries of Joseph and his loving care for Emma. In fact, when Emma was ill, Joseph was the one who would take personal care of her. He could have assigned a nurse to care for her, or even his mother, but it was him. Here's one of those journal entries. "Emma began to be sick with fever. Consequently, I kept in the house with her all day." Another entry. "Emma is no better. I was with her all day." Another entry. "Emma is a little better. I was with her all day." Another entry. "Emma gaining slowly. My health and spirits are good." Another one. "I rode with Emma to the temple for the benefit of her health. She is rapidly gaining." I love the amount of time this couple spent together. Other journal entries also highlight their connection with Joseph and Emma together. Here's one: continued translating and revising and reading letters in the evening. Sister Emma being present in the office. Or another one. In the afternoon, rode to Brother John Bimbo's on horseback, accompanied by Emma. Another entry: walked to the store with Emma. There's just so many journal entries of Joseph being connected to and with Emma. You could tell that was just something that was so important to him, having that strong husband-wife relationship. If you think about it, it's really remarkable. Joseph Smith may have even fit into our society better than his own when it comes to his views on marriage and family. You have to consider that in the 1830s, marriages were very formal. Husbands and wives used terms for each other like ma'am and sir. It was almost like, in many ways, kind of a business relationship where he worked out on the farm, she was in the garden, and they all came together and made it all work. But look what Joseph Smith teaches in the 1800s. He referred to the feelings that should exist between husbands and wives this way: that they should be companions, the nearest and dearest objects on earth in every sense of the word. He said that men should be aware of how they treat their wives. He said that many would awake on the morning of the resurrection sadly disappointed, for they by transgression would have neither their wives or their children. In other words, if we don't treat our spouses well here on this earth life, then don't dare think that we'll have them with us in the next life. I'm going to share with you the story of Jesse Crosby, and this is depicted in one of the church videos, Joseph Smith and the Restoration, and it's just a little bit different, but here's the actual story. Some of the home habits of the prophet, such as building kitchen fires, we would call that today turning on the oven, right? Carrying out ashes, cleaning the oven, carrying in wood and water, assisting in the care of the children, were not in accord with my idea of a great man's self-respect. The incident of Joseph carrying a sack of flour gave me the opportunity to give him some corrective advice, which I had desired to do so for a long time. I reminded him of every phase of his greatness and called to his mind the multitude of tasks he performed that were too menial for such as he. To fetch and carry flour was too great a humiliation. Too terrible a humiliation, I repeated, for you who are the head, and you should not do it. The prophet listened quietly to all I had to say, and then made his answer in these words. He said, if there be humiliation in a man's house, who but the head of that house should or could bear that humiliation? Sister Crosby was a very hard-working woman, taking much more responsibility in her home than most women take, thinking to give the prophet some light on home management. I said to him, Brother Joseph, well, my wife does much more hard work than does your wife. Joseph replied by telling me that if a man cannot learn in this life to appreciate a wife and to do his duty to her and properly taking care of her, he need not expect to be given one in the hereafter. I love this from Jesse Crosby. He said, his words shut my mouth as tight as a clam, and I took them as a terrible reproof. After that, I tried to do better by the good wife I had and tried to lighten her labors. So here's Jesse Crosby coming to correct Joseph Smith for doing all these menial chores. And Joseph says, no, that's how it's supposed to be. And then look at Joseph's teaching here. He said, it is the duty of a husband to love, cherish, and nourish his wife, and cleave unto her, and none else, and honor her as himself. I love that counsel. Joseph also had some great counsel on marriage to the sisters. He said, in this account, it says, he exhorted the sisters always to concentrate their faith and prayers for and place confidence in their husbands, whom God has appointed for them to honor, and in those faithful men whom God has placed at the head of the church to lead his people, that we should arm and sustain them with our prayers. And then on another occasion, he's talking to the Relief Society sisters, and he said that when a man is borne down with trouble, when he is perplexed with care and difficulty, if he can meet a smile instead of an argument or a murmur, if he can meet with mildness, it will calm down his soul, soothe his feelings. When the mind is going to despair, it needs a solace of affection and kindness, and that was counsel he was giving to the sisters on maybe how they should treat their husbands. Anyway, this is all great stuff, but the whole premise here is that Joseph was taught these principles in his own home by a loving father and a loving mother. Maybe we can finish with just talking about Joseph Smith's kindness and his charity, which once again was taught in a family that had a reputation for being kind and charitable. And this is the impact that parents can have as they build a legacy and as they create a culture of kindness and support and love. When the Saints had been driven from Missouri and began to settle in Illinois, Joseph went to Quincy, where he visited around from house to house among the saints to see how they were situated and gave words of strength and encouragement to them. When informed sometime later that a brother who lived some distance from Nauvoo had his house burned down, nearly everyone present expressed sympathy for that man, but Joseph put his hand in his pocket, took out $5 and said, "I feel sorry for this brother to the amount of $5. How much do you feel sorry for him?" I love that. There's another great story that a African-American man named Anthony, who lived in Nauvoo, was arrested for selling liquor on Sunday, contrary to the law. He pleaded that the reason he had done so was that he might raise the money to purchase the freedom of a dear child held as a slave in a southern state. He had been unable to purchase the liberty of himself and a wife, and now wished to bring a little child to their new home. Joseph said, "I'm sorry, Anthony, but the law must be observed. We will have to impose a fine." The next day, Brother Joseph presented Anthony with a fine horse, directing him to sell it and use the money obtained for the purchase of the child. Joseph had so much kindness and love and charity. And once again, growing up and being raised in this remarkable family, he was able to then carry those great lessons and those traditions of love and kindness into his own family. Well, everyone, we are both grateful for Joseph Smith and for his influence and for his love and for his focus on the family. And once again, one of our great takeaways from our church history trip was how remarkable the Smith family really was. And I think that's a testament of their goodness. And it helps all of us understand that those principles from their proclamation on how to build a strong family, on principles of faith and prayer and repentance and forgiveness and respect and love and compassion and work and wholesome recreational activities, I think we can make a really strong argument that that is exactly how the Smith family lived. The foundation of their family was certainly based on those principles. For LDS today, let's do something. I think a great family discussion, and even a discussion between husband and wife, could be this: do we have a supportive family? Are we there for each other? What can we do to support each other even more? And you'll be directed, you'll be led by the Spirit, you'll be able to answer those questions on how our family could support each other even more, just like the Smith family did. Everyone, thank you for being with us today. Thank you for indulging us a little bit as we were able to reflect back on some of our great memories of our recent church history trip. And we look forward to being with you next time.